I'm so happy to welcome Laurie Hardie to the show. She lives in the Seattle area where she is a radio personality and a podcaster, as well as a leader in the field of mentoring. I'm so glad she can join us today. Thank you, Laurie. Thanks for coming on today.
So good to be here. I was trying to remember when we met, and it was because we were both coaches so long ago. Yeah.
I think it was about 7 or 8 years ago. And it was the first time I did an interview from my home. You know, it was an audio interview that you aired on your station. And it was kind of the first techie thing I'd done like that. So you're with which station in Seattle?
Warm 106.9. It's called Hubbard Radio, and we have hubs all over the US, but in Seattle we have 5 stations.
And that's a big deal right now because your station's right up there at the top, isn't it?
Yeah, we're actually the #1 station in the nation right now.
That's great. And you said you've had to do a lot of pivoting at the station because of COVID.
Yeah, it's been so crazy because my main job in the afternoon is traffic. Well, I always say that it's job security, right? Because we're never not going to have traffic. Well, COVID hit, no traffic. And a lot of people got laid off because, you know, we also didn't have advertisers. And so my boss was gracious enough to say, just go find out what's going on around town, and the things you don't hear in the news, you talk about that. So it was really a nice, fun challenge. Yeah.
And you also do a number of podcasts, and I will post those in the show notes so people can refer to those. Today, we're going to focus on mentoring. And I know you've done quite a bit of that. Tell us about the organizations that you've worked with and what the missions is like for each of those.
Well, Big Brother, Big Sister was the first one. And it was so great because I didn't really know a lot about mentoring. And so after I worked with them, I learned so much. And that's when I went on to get my degree. I was already a coach. But what I really honed in on is the reverse mentoring, because we were in this technical age, and a lot of the adults didn't know how to do their tech. They didn't know how to do their phone or their computer. And I'd say, find a kid, and, you know, it's reverse mentoring, because if they're helping you with a computer, you're going to end up telling them a story or two, you know, and you get that kind of connection. And so, and then my daughter in Reading was Big Brother, Big Sister, and also 4-H mentor. And then she has taken that and ran with it with the Catalyst mentoring program in Reading. And so that's been really fun to watch her take, you know, the stuff she has learned and then the new stuff and incorporate it into helping kids. And the one thing about mentoring with kids is they can't believe you show up just to hang out with them. And I remember the older mentors, like, so I had a really big high school program, and the high schoolers were like, yeah, you know, they got it. But the older people are like, what are we going to do? I'm like, read a book. And they're like, well, how about I take them out and buy? I'm like, no, you don't want to set a precedence, you know? And I think we so underestimate the value of time, and when we spend time with people. And, you know, and I love the reverse mentoring, because when we think of what's going on in nursing homes and how alone people are, you know, younger people go in to just hang out and hear their stories, you know? So
you talk in your book about your single parenting journey, your journey after your divorce and raising your 3 kids was not an easy one. Just the basics like shelter and food were a challenge for you. And
yeah.
I was very inspired by the story that you told in your book about the people in Kansas City that started the organization to read. What was the name of it again? Lead to Read? Lead to Read, I think, where people just committed to 1 hour a week to go into, I think it was 3rd or 4th grade classes, and read to the children and have them read back to them, and just have some light conversation with them. And
yeah, my friends were involved in that. And they were just amazed at how you go to the inner city and you sit with a kid and read to them and you feel like, what's the big deal? But to them, it's such a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, many of their parents are working multiple jobs and they really don't have much one-on-one time with other adults. So
Yeah.
I thought that story was such a great example of just that hour a week of commitment and how life-changing it can be.
Well, and also with my kids, raising them on my own, my family wasn't, I was on an island and my family was helpful, but they weren't on the island. And the different people that reached out and spent time with my kids, made such a difference. And it just helped them know that other adults liked them. It is a big effort to take time out of your schedule. But also, I think if we start to realize the impact and how important it is and how much it matters. And I get emails or Facebook messages all the time from kids that were in the Big Brother Big Sister program who are now big brothers and big sisters because it impacted them so much that they wanted to do it too.
Yeah, yeah, the ripple effect. I have
Yeah.
a friend who loves to say it takes so little to live above the level of mediocrity.
Oh, I love
And
that.
you really see that here when you just step out in those small
Mhm.
ways, it can really create such transformation for people. Tell me some of the stories that you experienced in Big Brother, Big Sister
So
with
one
men.
of my favorite stories was there was this kid and I had met him. He was a teenager, probably in 10th or 11th grade. And I interviewed him and I just thought he was amazing. Now, he had a mohawk and he had a lot of piercings. And the boy I matched him with, it was a perfect match. But the mom, was like, she had some things that she was worried about. And I get that, when you're matching the kid up. So we had this big picnic, and so the parents came, and so the mom came with her kids and her boy. Both her kids were in the program. Her boy ran up to his mentor, and I watched her face because I was afraid she would judge him, you know. And her eyes got huge, and she looked at me, and I thought, I'm just going to give her some time. And so they walked around and enjoyed the place. It was this great ranch on Whidbey and Whidbey Island. And afterwards, she came to me and she said, I was so mad at you when I drove up and I saw him. I was so mad at you. And she said, and then I find out his older brother's handicapped and he helps him and he pushes his wheelchair and he takes care of him. And she said, I can't think of a better mentor for my son. And it just shows that, you know, it's so easy and it can be so quick to judge, especially
Right,
when it comes to our
right.
own kids, because our mama bear kicks in.
Hmm, hmm.
But if it's a good mentoring program, they're going to vet everybody out. They're going to have background checks, and they're going to have been interviewed probably many times. So, and the thing that I love about coaching, which you do too, is with mentoring, I teach a lot of the coaching skills because, a good mentor, I think that we think mentoring is telling, talking, but a good mentor really listens
Right, right.
and asks good questions. And when I was first single, I really wanted to write a book and I wanted to be a speaker. That was my goal. And I couldn't find anyone to mentor me. It was before internet. And then I found this lady, her dad worked with Zig Ziglar. And I don't even know how I found her in that day and age, but I asked her to mentor me and she was like, oh, I wouldn't know what to do. And I think about that so much because, if anybody asked me to mentor them, I would jump in if I had the time and just say yes, because I know the value of just listening, of just being with someone. And often I think we don't do it because we don't think we have enough to offer, but our time and our ears are enough to offer.
As you know, the focus of this channel is to really motivate older adults to engage more with culture. And
Mhm.
and you did mention that teens more readily sign up to be a mentor. and you
Yeah.
see more confidence in them. But older adults, in particular, seem to be less prone to volunteer for things like that. And
So
what encouragement could you give to people?
something one of my friends told me, I asked her, I go, why is it the older people don't want to mentor? And she goes, well, because we were the 60s and we didn't want to be around adults. And so now we just think they don't want to be around us. So that is in a sense a culture. But what I would say is like, so when texting first came about and my kids stopped talking on the phone, so I had to figure out how to text them. I grabbed a young kid at work. He was the same age as my daughter. I'm like, help me out, And right shortly after he taught me how to do that, his mom passed away. She had early onset Alzheimer's. And I think he just kind of connected with me as like a mom figure. And so I needed to ride the rail to the airport. And I mean, I rode the bus every day, but I didn't know how. So he said, meet me before work and we'll go down, we'll have lunch, we'll ride the rail and I'll show you how it works. And I mean, I'll never forget that this kid who, helped me, then when he had a loss in his life, he felt connected, but it all initiated really by him being willing to help me with
Uh-huh.
technology. And I think really seriously, Cheryl, I think so many people feel like they're not enough. And that's why I call my podcast Enough. When we can realize that whatever we have to offer is enough. And, being a Christian, I know that often I hear single moms say, oh, it was a godsend. So and so's husband, took my son with them too. Or, and it's like being willing to just say yes and see where it takes you. There's plenty of books on mentoring. And right now, there's a big buzz. Have you noticed with business mentoring? It's
Yes.
like, but like with coaching, there's a lot of people that say they're coaches, but they're actually consultants.
Hmm.
And so the mentoring I think we're talking about isn't the adult telling the child what to do. It's the adult saying, I see you as a valuable person and I'm just going to hang out with you for a little while. And I remember the adults would always say this, I don't feel like I'm doing enough. And when I ran a day center for homeless women, and women would come and want to volunteer. And I'll never forget this day. This woman came and she said, well, what can I do? And I said, well, see that lady over there? I said, if you could just sit with her and talk to her, she's kind of new here. And so she talked to her, but the lady kept falling asleep. And so when lunch came around, she got up, she got her lunch, and they chatted a little. And then the ladies started getting ready to leave. And she walked up to me and she said, this really isn't for me. I didn't do anything. And I said, do you know that lady probably hasn't slept in over a week? And you thought she was falling asleep on you because you were boring. You were safe. She was actually able to get safe sleep for a couple of hours because she trusted you. And she
Mm.
was like, oh, so often we feel like we got to do and we got to say, but really we just got to be. And maybe if we named it something different than mentoring, because that feels like pressure. If we're just like, give yourself a timeout with a kid, or I don't know, but maybe it's the pressure of the word, but it really, it takes so little. And now with Zoom and technology, I mean, you can, with your grandkids, we can hop on Zoom and chat with them. And, it's a way to stay connected. And when I look at the problem, the heroin I'm also a recovery coach. So I teach people to become recovery coaches.
Okay.
And when we look at all that's going on and when people start to get clean and sober, a lot of it is that their self-worth. Nobody's ever cared that much about them. It's not always that way. A lot of good parents, their kids do drugs, but a lot of them, there's a history of nobody really caring. And a little caring goes such a long way.
I'm gonna hold up your book again too. Did not see that coming. Such a great book. And you have a chapter in here on mentoring, and it's also full of really your experiences, isn't it? Your
A lot of how to
story.
let go.
Yeah. Well, thanks
Yeah.
so much for being with us today, Laurie.
Thank you.